is just me, Lewis, here today. Let's get into it.
I just wanna rewind to when we were young and hard. Back to all those good times. Take me back to the start.
That's right. Hello. It is the Wildcard Rewind podcast, a special Puka Nakua themed edition. I am untethered. I am unchained. It is just me in the room. So we are going to spend 3 hours talking about why Puka Nakua is the best player in the NFL. Let's start off with his hair. Thank you so much for listening. It is a slightly strange week this week in the run up to Christmas. We've had a little bit of scheduling errors, hence why we are coming to you on a Friday rather than the normal Monday, which is why you just have me today. So it's going to be a quick little episode updating you on our games, talking about some little tips for the week, and then setting you on the path to Christmas next week, which at the time recording is just 5 days away. We are knee deep into the fantasy playoffs now, which is obviously incredibly exciting. Hopefully you smashed through your first week and you're now on into semi-finals and ready and raring for all of the joy that can bring and all of the nervousness that can bring. The one thing that I would say to you as we get into week 16, and this is something that I've learned from the last week, which is, of course, a regular feature. Great work, Lewis, knitting those two things together, is to really evaluate the matchups week in, week out, and not just think about the players that got you to this point. We had a mad week in week 15, particularly looking at DFS in season-long best ball, where a lot of the players that would have got you to this point suddenly disappointed. So Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley really struggled. Dave Montgomery got injured. Cooper Kupp hit a big fat 0, which I was 1 week out on in our fancy scare. It's really worth considering what are the matchups in front of us and really trying to evaluate that, as opposed to looking at, who got me to this point, who's been fantastic, and how can I use them then? A prime example is someone like Bucky Irving has been one of the best picks in fantasy football this year, but, we knew was coming in with an injury designation and did okay at the weekend, but not quite the stud performance you would have wanted from him. So I think it's really about evaluating where your team is properly going into this week, and hopefully you are looking at some titles. I'm looking at a fair few. I am in the semi-finals of Scott Fish Bowl, which means I'm in the top 250, which is very exciting, and also I believe 6 of 12 dynasty leagues. I'm in the semi-finals, 3 of which I had a bye to get into, but Scott Fish Bowl is the one that I'm really excited about. Hopefully there's a chance to at least, getting into semi-final on its own is absolutely incredible, and I'm very, very proud of that. And my team's looking really nice. I have Lamar, Baker, Jahmyr Gibbs, who's obviously coming into his own now, Achan, Mike Evans, Cooper Kupp. There's some really nice players in there who I'm quite excited for going into this week, but it does make me a little bit nervous. Let's crack on into our main feature, because it's just a quick one today. So we do 3 sets of predictions each week where we look into how studs, scares, and wildcards, hopefully you'll know by this point. And we are so close to getting to that final table. And with Hannah coming back last week and doing pretty terribly, we are currently on 15 points for Hannah, 15 points for me, and 16 for Paul. So it is so close going into that final few matchups. So we'll start off with our stud of the week. This is where we take an under-the-radar player and we think that they're going to absolutely smash this week, which sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. So last week, Hannah went for Jaleel McLaughlin. He was the running back 38, which is not fantastic. I went for Rico Dowdle, obviously a slightly less under the radar player, but he finished as the RB13, which was pretty nice. And then I need to decide how nice I'm going to be for Paul here, because Paul took ages to get his stud in, and he went with Rico Dowdle, who I'd already gone for. So Hannah gave him, because Hannah had to record a solo pod, Hannah gave him Jermaine Burton as his player. So if we are taking Jermaine Burton as his player, he finished with 0 points. But Paul did message in late, giving himself Grant Calcaterra, And Grant Calcaterra finished as the tight end 39. So do you know what? Regardless of what we say happened, which pick we're going to take from Paul, I'm going to say that Paul gets the point there. But now looking into ahead, who do we have this week? And I think this is a really interesting one. So I've gone with Roma Dunze. The Bears are really struggling, but they are this week playing the Lions. We know that you can throw on the Lions. We just saw the Bills do it fantastically. Roma Dunze, I keep writing articles about him in Dynasty circles saying that I think this is a buy candidate because I think Keenan Allen's going to be gone. But he's not really showing it just yet, but I still think he's the most talented wide receiver in this offense, and they're going to be playing from behind. So I'd be intrigued to see if Roma Dunze can do anything here. Hannah has gone. There's a sort of deep threat theme between the two here. Hannah has gone with Calvin Austin. Now, obviously, George Pickens has been ruled out. Last week, Calvin Austin finished as the wide receiver 33. He had 5 targets, 5 receptions, 65 yards. They're playing the Baltimore Ravens, who are again, you know you can throw on. So I think this is a really interesting one from Hannah. And Paul has gone back to the well with his favourite player, Nick Westbrook-Akine, who I'd love to look through and see how often he gets chosen here. Now, obviously, a few weeks ago, we struggled with Nick Westbrook-Akine because he struggled the last couple of weeks, but he's actually had a fantastic season. So Paul has decided to go back to the well with NWI. Let's take a quick break to talk about Puka Nacua a little bit more. Puka Nacua is obviously having an outstanding season. Those contested catches, those sideline catches are really, really exciting. And it just looks like he's taken a step up. We've seen that he's physical, but the way in which he's able to work with Matthew Stafford and work in different nuances of the way you're seeing him stem his routes, the way you're seeing his release packages, mixed with that physicality, is obviously probably has him on the path to the Hall of Fame. I think it would be unlikely at this point if Puka Nacua didn't get into the Hall of Fame. And that would be a scary thought. So let's move on to the scares. So last week, Hannah and I had an absolutely fantastic week. So Hannah went for Najee Harris, who finished as the running back 56, which is an incredible, incredible week from Hannah. I went for Tyrone Tracy, who finishes the running back 45. So again, pretty well done. And I'll give my props to Paul here, because Paul went for Jalen Hurts. Now, obviously, this is a step beyond the players that we went for, but Jalen Hurts finished as the quarterback 6. Jalen Hurts is having a really interesting season, actually, because I feel like he's not ever really thriving. But there, and is it 12-win team currently? And Jalen Hurts is absolutely thriving in fantasy as well, even though it never seems like he's playing too well. He's currently the quarterback 3, has finished in the top 10, since week 6, has only finished outside of it 3 times. And even then it was QB 15 and QB 16 and QB 15. So he's really not punishing you. But that is mixed with the fact that he's thrown for 300 yards once this season, never passed for 3 touchdowns, but he just rushes for touchdowns. So then in fantasy football, sometimes that's all you need to do at the quarterback position. So I feel bad for Paul. He is unfortunately taking the point on this one. But I think fair play to him for going a little bit further. So who have we gone with as our scares for this week? Well, I have gone for Terry McLaurin. So the reason why I've gone for Terry McLaurin is because he is playing against the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think this is a really difficult matchup. We've seen them shut down the wide receiver position a few times. And I think Jaden Daniels has actually taken a step back in the last few weeks. He really exploded out of the gates, but it hasn't quite looked the same recently. So I wouldn't be too surprised to see them manage to shut down Terry McLaurin with the cornerbacks that they have. Now, obviously, Terry McLaurin is going to get unbelievable volume, so this is a slightly risky one, but sometimes it's more fun to go bold. Hannah and Paul have both gone for Texans, which I think is very interesting. They're playing the Chiefs this week, and we know the Chiefs' defense is really good. So Paul has gone for Nico Collins, and Hannah has gone for Joe Mixon. And the Texans' offense is really struggling. They, I think, have already won the AFC South, which is just because the rest of those teams are absolutely terrible. But the Texans offense really doesn't look fantastic. So I think going for these players is probably a good route to go down. But I'll be intrigued to see with both of them going for Chiefs how that then ends up working out. So those are our scares of the week. So before we go to the wild card, let's take a little break and talk about the fact that the Rams are probably going to win the Super Bowl. So obviously the Rams started off 1-4. That was really disappointing. But since the bye, they have been absolutely fantastic. The only games that we've lost recently was that Eagles game where we got ran all over. Fair play, that's a really difficult one. But we beat the Bills and then we beat the 49ers in an entirely different way. We scrapped through that one. The Rams offense is on absolute fire right now. And you're going to see against the Jets this weekend, that defense is not going to be able to keep up with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. And the Rams offense getting healthy with that offensive line really starting to actually work together. Those pancakes that you saw from Kevin Dotson in the screen game recently were absolutely elite. And this is when you want to get hot. You don't want to be good at the beginning of the season. You need to be good at the end of it. And the Rams, with the Lions really starting to struggle with injuries, we've seen David Montgomery go down and their entire defense go down, basically. The Eagles are kind of the main threat in the NFC. So if the Rams can win the division, I think the Rams can then win the Super Bowl. And not only do I think they can, I think that they will. That's not my wild card because that's pretty much guaranteed to happen. So closing off with our wild cards of the week. So Hannah said that the Browns would beat the Chiefs, which didn't happen, and said that Aaron Rodgers would finish as a top 5 quarterback, which did happen. He was the quarterback 4 on the week last week. I said that the Bills-Lions game would outscore the Bills-Rams game, which was insane because there was 86 points in the Bills-Rams game, but there was 90 in the Bills-Lions game. So it was absolutely fantastic, and I actually managed to get that one right, which is a little bit crazy, but somehow I managed to pull that off. I also said that Calvin Ridley would finish as a top 10 wide receiver against the Jags, and that very much did not happen. He was wide receiver. Oh, sorry, it was against the Bengals, wide receiver 43 last week. So not a fantastic week, so I didn't get that one. Then Paul said that the Jags would beat the Jets. They very nearly did, but they didn't. And then Rico Dowdle would finish as a top 3 running back, which unfortunately didn't happen either. So I'm really sorry, but this is a 3-pointer for Paul this week with Jermaine Burton / Grant Calcaterra, Jalen Hurts, and then the wild cards, which means that going into our week 16 predictions, I've got 15 points. Hannah has 15 points and Paul has 19 points. That is a whole week ahead of the rest of us. But let's see how we can do this week with our wild cards. So Hannah has said that the Jets will beat the Rams, which we all know, everyone listening knows can't happen because the Rams are winning the Super Bowl. She's also said that the Raiders quarterback, so she said Aiden O'Connell / Desmond Ridder, so I'm just putting it as the Raiders quarterback, will finish as a top 5 quarterback on the week. Now, the Raiders are playing the Jags, which I assume is the reason why she's done this, because the Jags defense is awful. I have said that Jahmyr Gibbs will finish as the running back 1 overall. This is purely a volume thing. We've seen David Montgomery go down, and I think this is within his range of upsides, but I didn't want to just go top 5 because that doesn't really feel enough. I said RB1, going to finish as the number 1. I also said the Bengals lose to the Browns. It just feels like the sort of thing that the Bengals will do this season. And what a shame that we're kind of wasting an MVP season from Joe Burrow on an awful, awful Bengals team. Paul has said that Mac Jones, so sticking with that Raiders-Jags game, will finish with more than 16.5 fantasy points. And then he's also said that the Rams, the Cardinals, and the Seahawks will win and the 49ers will lose. Now, I'm fine with that because so long as the Rams keep winning, if we win out, we win the division. So it's completely fine with me. And we know the Rams will win because the Rams are winning the Super Bowl. Thank you so much for listening. I think I'm going to call it at that, and it will be a relatively quick one. We will be back with you hopefully on Monday. So we will talk to you again before Christmas and going into the final week of the fantasy regular season, which is incredibly exciting. But I hope that you are well. I hope that you are safe. I hope that you are enjoying your time off if you're off, or looking forward to your time off, or when you get there. Remember, Puka Nacua is going to the Hall of Fame. The Rams are winning the Super Bowl, and Paul is going to prison. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at Wildcard Rewind. Head on over to our YouTube channel, search for us at Fancy Wildcard, and make sure you give us a like and a subscribe. And we will see you next week. Let's go.